careful of those island boys. Little girl, use your head. They will tear you up like a paper toy. Oh, no, no, no. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, no, no, no.
Hi, I'm Amanda.
And I'm Rumbi.
Welcome to It's Layered.
We're in a long-distance friendship that started over 20 years ago when we were in high school.
We'll be talking about all things life, love, family, anything and everything else under the sun.
Delve deeper with us because in life, you know, Gine, my layers.
Oh, no, no, no. Yeah, 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 yeah.
So, in light of just coming heavy this season, our elevation this season, we've obviously chosen another topic, Rumbi, that in the Malays, domestic violence. What are you thinking? Why do you think this is difficult to chat about?
Because it happens so often in, especially our communities, Black community. It's such a huge. What's the thing? It was like the most known, and what's not known unknown, but like the thing that happens the most that people think or pretend does not happen. Like it's one of those things that is so prevalent.
A huge elephant in the room.
Yes, huge elephant in the room. And I don't know about other people, but it's had an impact in my life as well. And I've seen it and around me, grew up with it around me. And I think it's difficult because it's confronting, because no one wants to look like the villain, right? Or no one wants to look like the sort of the victim. You don't want to look weak either. So it's one of those things. And of course, as Zimbabweans, we like to uphold the perfect home situation, the perfect optics are so huge for us. So it's uncomfortable. It's also just in general a difficult thing to talk about. So yeah, I think that's why we're talking about it, which is kind of warped, but yeah. And for you?
I have to agree. Yeah. I think also people have different nuances and different facets to them.
Yes.
So I think domestic violence really brings that to the forefront, because if it's your mate who's being violent towards his wife or towards her husband, it's like, oh, but they're not like that with me. Yes. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, it definitely drives this whole, it's for most part, it's behind closed doors. It's the ultimate behind closed doors. And the moment that person, the perpetrator, becomes so confident to do it in front of someone else, then that's escalation. They've come from a long way of having hidden it. So I think that's why it's so difficult to talk about, because it's confronting, it's jarring.
Yes.
And then when you see it in someone else, you realize that you're seeing it at the end, because definitely they're not just going to start with punching, you know, they're going to start. So then you'll be like, they're so confronting, because you're like, they're not like that with me. They're such a stand-up person. It like leaves you vulnerable, because you're like, do I know you?
Exactly.
Like, how can I not know this about you?
Exactly.
And then it's like, oh, what then? Our automatic thing is, what did she or what did he do to drive you to that?
Yeah.
So I think that's what makes it difficult to chat about, because it's the ultimate in realizing that you never know someone.
Truly,
you never truly.
There are pieces that we hide, like people hide from each other.
Exactly.
And to that too, I think it's taboo to speak of, because this idea of airing dirty laundry, and we are a religious society, you know, we believe in God, and also like what's happening in someone's home, leave it alone. That's their business. It has nothing to do with me. It's such, and I think it's also taboo because a lot of people have experienced it or seen it or witnessed or been around. So it's kind of, this kind of best kept secret, which is not really a secret. You know?
Yeah. And then I think mentioning it as well shatters the dream, shatters the optics.
Yes.
Because rightfully, when you say to someone, if someone beat you up, would you be with them? They'll be like, no, you know? But then the reality could be so layered.
Yes.
You know, so I think it's like it confronts us as a people even individually, that I never thought I'd be this person, you know,
Yes.
either the perpetrator or the victim.
Yes.
Because you're like, that's not what I thought I would do. Because
Yes.
people always think in certain situations, they definitely know how they would act and be. And the situation happens. And usually with domestic violence, it tends to be what you thought you wouldn't do is what you end up doing.
And I think in the movie Enough, the J-Lo movie, I think they said it takes a certain number of times before someone actually leaves. I don't know if that was Enough or in another movie, but it takes a number of times before someone who's experienced domestic violence actually leaves. And it's such a weird
leaves
journey.
And cleaves as well.
Yes, yeah, like you just like, I'm done with this person. So I think that's the other thing, because they may not know, do I really want to leave? Or like they think, okay, even, yes, when I was a kid, I was like, if this happens, I'm definitely not going to sit around for this. And then now they're like, what? And I'm actually thinking about staying, and it plays on that, and it kind of, you know, twists you up a little bit on.
What compelled us, do you think, to talk about this? Because I mean, you and I, people who don't know, we obviously base this around, you know, bring up different topics that are relevant to us, irrelevant to our existence as Black women, Zimbabwean women, African women.
Yes.
And this in particular, I felt like we always had a driving force to be like, we need to talk about this, because we definitely have not heard it talked about. And if so, not heard it talked about at length.
Yes.
So what do you think has compelled us to date to decide to just come here?
Yeah, I think it's questioning the society we live in, right? To be like, guys, you know, it's not normal to live in an abusive relationship, right? Like I think it's so normalized, and I feel crazy even saying this, but it's so normalized where we come from to live in abusive. And we're not just talking only physical, but like verbal, emotional, financial. Financial is huge.
Huge.
And all that. Obviously, domestic, like there's abuse in many forms, but it's so normalized, and it's kind of like, you know, that's not supposed to be the way it is. I saw there was a tweet the other day about someone saying, you know, parents telling their girl child to just hang on, like in a terrible home situation. And I'm like, yes, that's literally what happens. If someone actually then builds up the courage to say, I'm not happy in this relationship, I need to leave because of domestic violence or other forms of abuse, it's like, no, what have you done? How can you make it work? But it's not taken seriously. But it's actually like, it needs to be taken seriously, because what it builds is a society of violence, of perpetrators getting away with violence and victims having no voice, and therefore being sort of tied to these to the oppressor and the perpetrator. And we're not healing as a society. We're not moving past this. We're not fostering healthy like it just creates, and then children are born into that, and then see that, and then it's like these cycles, you know, which I believe need to be broken. That's how I feel. I don't know about you.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, throughout the pandemic, throughout lockdowns, South Africa in particular, there was so many girls that we saw that were being violated. And whether, as you said, most of it ends up becoming physical, but obviously it might not start out there at all.
Yes.
And it's like they become a clickbait or like topic of the month or the week, and you're like, oh, that girl, oh, that story, oh my God. And then next week is like someone else, or you've forgotten about it at all. And now, as you said, it's become so normalized, and we've stepped away from seeing it as horrific as it actually is.
Yes.
You know, this is not normal. And we should not take it like, oh, no, itika, or it happens, you know. And I feel like we're getting to that point where we are taking it like that. Or if the guy is rich, or if the guy is a provider, you know, you put up with these things, you know, that's how our African aunties would have raised us. That's what happens in marriage, you know. And it's like, I think we have always been quite intentional with our podcast of trying to make us question why we do what we do.
Yes.
You know, we can't make people change, of course. We're not going to be in your house every day telling you what to do.
Yes.
But like, it's a good moment to take a moment to just consider, like,
for sure,
what's going on
and not wait
here?
until too late, you know, like where where people then tragically lose their lives because they're in these unhealthy. It's like, oh, why didn't she leave? But it's like, do we make the environment, do we make safe spaces for these people to be able to speak up? I mean, you hear things of people going to report to the police when they're abused, and then they're like, oh, what did you do to this to deserve this? Or what happens in your house? What happens in your house is yours. Like, it's your business. Like, when there aren't those safe spaces, like, wow. And to add to that, the Zimbabwean economy and environment is very strained. So then now people really use the power of, like, I feed you, I clothe you, I educate your children or whatever against, and it's such a twisted environment.
For sure. Why do you think though it's still prevalent in our lives? Because as you said, we're a religious society. We spoke in the previous episode about how westernized we are. Why do you think it's because, I mean, as much as people say act like it's not there, we all know
I think it's prevalent again because of the cycle, like I'm talking about. It's like growing up seeing your elders and like their elders, your elders, and then it starts to infiltrate your society, because even our age group, it's happening too. So it's not like it's still an abnormal thing. It continues. And again, as mentioned before, the economy of the country we come from, patriarchy is a huge thing, a huge part of it. Man is right, you don't challenge the man, things like that. Fear, the fear that's instilled in us, and just not feeling like we have a voice. And if we are honest, I think the domestic violence often happens against women, though I have heard more and more of women, retaliating or acting out against their partners. I've heard of like castration, of different things, but the most common is against women, understandably so, because of patriarchy and the chokehold it has our society in. So no pun intended. So I don't know, why do you think it's that way?
I think it brings to the forefront a lot of the things you've talked about, classism. So men, or the perpetrator, I should say, will feel like they are above someone else.
Yes.
Because, I mean, to really treat someone that way is to see them in some way as beneath you.
Yes.
Like, I can do what I want. Like, to the point where I can beat you up to a pulp. Like, it's like, I can do what I want, literally. So it's like, as you said, Zimbabwe is not really in the best economic situation. So then that also becomes about financial independence. So a lot of women don't have financial independence in Zimbabwe. We're financial dependence, because they're taking care of the kids, taking care of the household, which then gives, again, a sense of ownership to people who then decide to do this. Because they're like, oh, like, I can do this to you, and I know you're not going to be able to walk out of here and survive. Your wounds will heal. We'll call it a day, and round 2, round 3 is coming around the corner. Like, it's just like, and alcoholism, not as an excuse as well.
So true.
But that is such a huge thing. Someone literally being out of their senses when they do things like that. And not as an excuse, of course. It's not to say everyone who gets drunk, beats up people, but it does definitely play a part that things can get escalated quickly and out of hand. I think the secrecy is also the major thing, because not that we need to name and shame, but we need to name and shame, like, seriously. Because I think, not doing something with no consequence just means that there's what's going to happen. At the most, Tete Ningi will come and talk to you and be like, hey, Msadaro, don't do that. And that's it.
Yes, exactly.
So, the effects that it has on your kids, the effects that it has on your neighbors, even. Everyone can get involved, depending on how, especially when you live in like a high density area. People can all be like, and people will know about it.
Yeah.
Or, you have scars and all these marks on you, or whatever the case may be. I think the secrecy around it actually makes it even more prevalent, because it's like
People think they can get
it's
away
not
with
happening,
it.
and they can get away with it. They can get away with it because the victim's gonna be ashamed to share their story.
Yeah.
And the perpetrator is also gonna be like, oh, I'm sorry that happened, and then next week we're back where we started.
I think too, you're so right. And I think it symbolizes a fragmented society, and a society, because there's so much that's not working in the society. There's so many things people can get away with, and then tie in the culture side of things, and it becomes even more prevalent and more normalized in a way, because there's no one holding anyone accountable. People are just trying to live. There are no systems, there's no social service, there's no social security, there's no, we grew up, there was Childline at the time, but like, I don't know how accessible it is, for people to call and say, hey, I'm being abused, there's domestic, not just for between adults, but children too, all those things. So yeah, it's
and there's also a victim mentality at play, where it's like, it's not that bad because I get XYZ, at least I have a roof over my head, at least I have a, or the moment they do reach out to someone, if that someone's not the right person, because it takes courage to then also open up your dirty laundry, or air your dirty laundry, so to speak. And then if you're telling someone and then they're like, it happens, or it happened to me and I didn't do anything about it, or you will grow out of it, or whatever, it can then also make it normal.
Yes.
Because it's like, okay, I reached out to Tete and she said that she had it. So okay, this must.
My question to you then, Amanda, is, even as we discuss this topic, do you think we're discussing it from a point of privilege because we don't have those existential issues? So, because that's what people will say, right? You don't know what it's like, if I'm not with this person, I won't eat. If I'm not so are we coming from the point of privilege of being outside of the environment where we are dependent to that extent on someone, and if ish hits the fan, we can take care of ourselves, like we're removed from.
I think I would normally, because we speak, especially on this podcast, through a Zimbabwean lens, Zimbabwean diasporan lens specifically, it makes it seem like we're like, I got it good here. But in Australia, this is an issue too. I actually think this affects all classes. This affects all backgrounds. Of course, when we speak on a Zimbabwean thing, we're just giving you the extra layer of, but even the rich people or people who do have financial independence or companies or can still, in fact, sometimes even more so, because like, you think the partner can be like, you think you're a big tough guy, I'll show you. It's like an ego thing, right? And it's like, but you might be CEO outside these doors, but in here you were under my foot. You know what I mean? And it's like that. So I feel like because I definitely remember during lockdown, some people were desperately calling the helplines. Like there's Beyond Blue and a few here. And they were like, I can't stay home because it's an unsafe environment for me. So you're telling me now I have to stay home to not get this disease. I would rather get COVID than, be staying under this roof 24/7 with this person. Yes, we're married though. And this is coming across the board from all walks of life, all backgrounds. So okay, when you speak about it in a Zim lens, we could sound like we're like, but when you look at it globally, I think domestic violence is seeped, it's everywhere,
for sure,
all kinds.
And I think the reason why it's more prevalent, I think this is what I was saying, in a society like Australia, you have the help you can reach out to. But because Zim is its own beast. And unless there's like some NGO, some humanitarian, you literally aren't, like, government ain't looking out for you like that.
No. But sidebar, isn't it funny that even if people have resources, doesn't mean they'll go for them?
For sure. Because there's fear that's associated with, like, I look like I don't know how to control my life, or I look like I'm weak, or people will judge me.
How do we get here?
How did I get here? I don't want to be the victim. Oh, but they're a good person. Really, it's just this one thing. You know, there's
everyone loves him because he tends to be the most charming guys as well.
Yeah.
Let's not lie. Sometimes people are like, what do you mean? He would never do that. People don't vouch for you. They make it seem like, again, like even like Rihanna and Chris Brown or whatever. It's like, what did she do? You know, it's like that mentality.
That is crazy. How aware are you that women can also be the perpetrators of domestic violence?
You know, I think I'm very pro-feminine.
Yes.
So like I when I speak, and even in this episode, forgive me, because a lot of times I'm going to be saying he, even though I am aware that women are, and it might not always be physical, but a lot of, as you said as well, mental abuse, you know, like manipulating someone and driving them down, and you know, that's quite common too. So I think I'm becoming more and more aware of it.
Yeah.
In a Zimbabwean context, I feel like with women, most times, as you've mentioned, it's in retaliation.
Yes.
So it's like, oh, you've beaten me 10 times. Now this 11th time, I'm going to show you, you know. So it's just toxic, man.
Yeah, toxic all the way.
It really is.
Toxic all the way. I think it's true. Why I think it's hard for society to realize or to fully grasp that women too can be the perpetrators is because we often look at violence coming from the point of like power physically, when it looks like, you know, because the notion is men, you know, they gain muscle more easily than women. They're biggest, you know, this is the generalization, of course. So visually, it's obvious, like men would be more likely to be violent and in that way. But I think it is true to be aware that also women are also perpetrators. I can absolutely agree that it's definitely mostly probably emotional and mental abuse, but I think some women too violently, you know,
they'll go there.
They like I told you of castration. I'm sure I've heard it in the news. Someone getting castrated. Yeah, you know, random
for sure,
like things like that. So for sure, but unfortunately, I feel the scale has tipped more towards men being perpetrators in general. But all violence is violence, or all abuse is abuse. I think that's the thing that's really hard. It's like, there's no like, oh no, but this is less.
Yeah, there's no scale. Yeah. No.
There's no scale. Because usually also mental damage is so much harder to overcome. Scars do heal sometimes. Obviously, there's tragic incidents where they don't and people lose lives and things like that. But mental scars are much harder to trace and to kind of understand.
And to pinpoint as well, because you don't really realize it until, again, like physical, if someone hits you, you know they've hit you. But with mental stuff, it's like it drains you over time.
Yes. It's like, did he? Or am I?
The gaslighting, right? The gaslighting, the narcissism, all that stuff is
for sure.
Takes the toll.
Would you say it's a deal breaker for you in a romantic relationship, domestic violence?
Yes. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be laughing about this, but yes. You know what? That's also layered, yes, because I've definitely been caught in situations before people think it's my husband. It's not my husband. Previous relationships where you get in a heated argument. You get so heated that, you know, pushing and shoving, and the physical stuff becomes, it's too close for comfort.
Yeah.
You know, you do it once, you do it twice. It's like, oh, okay, you know, when you're trying to, you know, especially if you're with someone who shuts down in an argument.
Yes.
Because, you know, as they're walking away, you're like, don't walk away. And obviously you grab their arm or you grab their, you know, and it's like, this can escalate.
Yeah.
And I think it's happened to me in a previous relationship before, where I've been like, who am I? And what is this? And what am I accepting? And, you know, the first time you apologize to each other, you're full of sorries, we never do it again. Then the second time is like, okay, no.
I understand.
Like this is, and obviously, and in no way am I victim shaming and saying people aren't strong enough or anything like that. But just for me personally, it was a wake up call because I was like, nah, I can't do this.
Yeah.
Like I'm not built for this. Like I'm not gonna allow myself to. But I think it's also because of this background I've had where I have seen it in previous relationships from other uncles, aunts, and
Yes.
and I've always thought not for me, So I think the moment I saw even a little bit of it, I just it's done deal. No, for me, because I know the escalation can be quick.
Yeah.
I have seen it happen.
Yeah.
So for me personally, definitely it's a deal breaker when it comes to the physical side. The mental stuff is where it's tricky.
Yeah, it's hard to pick up.
I think you're sucked in before you even realize.
Yeah.
And because a lot of it breaks down your sense of self, it's like, is it me? Is it him?
Yeah.
You
start questioning, like, who am I? Like, what
man.
did I do? Am I okay?
Yeah. And then that stuff, because it's mental as well, it's like, is it on purpose?
Yeah.
Does he not realize he's like this?
Yeah.
Is he a victim also of his circumstance? Is a narcissist born a narcissist, or did they become one? So these are the questions. Can we go to therapy for this? So I think for me, the physical is definitely yes, but the mental is where it starts to get tricky because I allow a bit more grace.
Yes.
Than I would with physical. I allow a bit more grace with the mental stuff because I'm like, okay, maybe he doesn't even realize that he's gaslighting me because maybe that's his fight language. Maybe that's his, So then I think, okay, can therapy work through this?
And does a person show a desire to change and make strides?
Yeah,
to change
exactly.
Exactly.
For sure. And what about for you?
It's a no from me too. I think similar to you, I've grown up with domestic violence in my home around me. So for me, it's a no, actually. Like anything that triggers like close to, I'm very easily triggered. And I think I know what I experienced growing up and seeing that and family and just, it was so twisted. Like I think it's too close to home for me to be like, I can sit with this. I think I almost went the extreme. I was like, like some people repeat what they've grown up with. And then like, I went like, hell, to the no. So anything is like, oh my gosh, so I've had to catch myself too, to be like, it's normal for people to get angry. It doesn't mean they're going to attack you.
See now.
So,
okay.
Like, it's like, you get upset, but does that mean you're going to attack somebody or you hate somebody or you're going to be vile towards someone and no, it's a natural emotion. Now, it doesn't mean, so I would like want to shut down and run away, like immediately.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? So
I completely get that. I completely see
it's a very layered thing for me. So I think
do you see it in yourself, like you being the perpetrator?
I think it could easily, because I'm a very opinionated person. I'm very like strong-minded. And so, I have to catch myself in a lot of things to be like, oh, am I being, too harsh or too demanding? And not just even to others, but within myself. Do you get what I mean? Like to start to be like too hard on myself, like, oh, you're being this or whatever. Those mental voices, like we're talking about, like mental and emotional abuse is a different ballgame, because then you start doing it to yourself in some ways. So you have to catch yourself, be like, actually, you're fine. It's not the end of the world, actually. So yeah, man, it's so layered. And I think for me, I'll have to say no. And I think, like you said, because I was thinking about any human interaction, there will be disagreement and misunderstanding, right? No one is perfect. I'm not perfect. Nobody is perfect. But I think it's the cycle, this thing of cycles, this thing of not wanting to get better. That's where I have take issue, if that makes sense. Like,
yeah,
where you're not trying to resolve, find a constructive way to work through things. And it doesn't have to be anything huge or dramatic, but it's like, how do we constructively work through things? But I think a lot of the time, we as people don't know how to manage our own feelings, our own emotions. And then that coupled with situation. So it just becomes like a melting pot of just a lot. So
I mean, to be fair, we say these things, but when you're in the situation,
you don't know.
And that's the major, to tie back to what we said in the beginning of the episode, that's one of the things that keeps it prevalent, because people think they know what they're gonna do and say they're gonna do that, and then do. Because I'm just sitting here hearing you speak, and I thought, if Marcel just decided to be Mike Tyson, round for round. He wants to tussle with me. Like, what would I do? Like, I was just literally thinking, and especially now with the added layer of motherhood.
Yes.
The added layer of, would I literally break my home?
Yeah.
Because of that? Would I be like, one punch, I'm out?
Yes.
Or is it like, okay, I forgive you, but don't do it again? Like, now it's like,
yep.
A question you have to really,
yeah.
And I don't think we can sit here on this pod and go back and forth. I don't think we can ever truly know the answer.
You don't know till you know, as in
until he decides to bite my ear like Evander Holyfield, Mike Tyson. I will not know if I'll be gracious enough to forgive him.
Or be like me, bruh. But it's so true. It's 100% true. Like, we feel like we know. Oh hell! And I think that's also been the tough part, because I've seen strong women in my life and been like, but like, I never thought you know what I mean? So that's where it really shows.
You make that judgment.
Yeah. And I think that's why it needs to be talked about, because it's really just like, yo, man, like, there's no formula for I can live with that. Like, there's no formula of who is not susceptible, who's
and there's no gauge as well of was that a one-off?
Yes.
Or not? Has he been chipping away at this? This person has never done this before, so I'm just gonna let it go. Or he's never done this before, so I'm definitely leaving. Like, is it like,
girl, you don't know till
layers.
So late. But again, I think it's important to talk about it, because it's like,
and to create a safe space for those
around you. So which brings us to, what advice would you offer to someone experiencing it, witnessing it, domestic violence and abuse? What would you say?
Definitely when it comes to the physicality of it, it sounds so, I would definitely say to leave. That's
find a place where you are safe.
Or find a place, But then the question then becomes, do you leave the relationship, or are you just leaving the space? Do you know what I mean? Like,
because some people then say, for example, especially with religion, they say marriage is not to be broken, right? And then some people counter that with, okay, but you make sure you are safe space, and then ask for counseling, like with a mediator, like not alone, like, you know what I mean? So you handle that.
For sure.
Some people say that.
And can you move past it? Because next time he wants to be intimate with you, or he raises his hand too quickly, are you going to jump?
Every time.
Yeah. Are you out dodging here? Like, seriously. So it's just like, and we make light of this because these are the questions you really will be asking yourself. So I find that I'm probably ill-advised to advise anyone, because it's such a personal thing. And it's such a case-by-case thing. That it's like, I can have a blanket thing of seek help, seek a shelter, seek advice, go talk to someone, and all those things are true. But I think it's a decision you yourself have to make within yourself. As you said, you quoted the movie enough, and there's been other movies made. It's never really from the first time that someone, leaves and cleaves. A lot of times,
it takes many
times.
And I think really this is a discussion, and to find out what resources actually are out there to help people who are experiencing, some form of domestic violence. And also, I think what we can do is also be, for someone we know who's experienced domestic violence, like what kind of friend do we want to be? I think that's more where I can even try and offer advice as opposed to someone who is experiencing it, because I don't know, I'm not in those shoes, and it's much easier said than done. But for those around or who know someone who is experiencing domestic violence, I think the biggest thing is to make them feel safe, supported, that they can talk about it, that they don't need to take it on themselves, like that it diminishes who they are, and seek help for them, because it's such even when it's violent, it's also really mental, and support, and also be ready and prepared that the person will go back, and don't
I was about to say that. How do you think you would treat the perpetrator? Obviously the victim's your friend, you've talked through, she or he decided to go back.
How would I treat
what then?
I think, my thing is always to hear someone out. I've always been someone to be like, let me hear your perspective. And one thing about advice, you can never tell someone how to live their life. You can only give them show concern, show your, like, I'm concerned that this could happen again. I'll be here for you, of course, but please know I'm always here for you. I'm concerned it could happen again. Is there any way we can work around this until, things settle down? Do you get what I mean? Like, you have to offer to say you don't deserve, you are worthy, you don't deserve this kind of experience. However, I will support you, and I'm here. And that's a hard thing for us humans to do, is to support and be there for someone if you feel they've made a decision contrary to what you think they should do.
Or what you think is stupid, quote unquote.
Exactly.
I think for me, I've experienced it once where, unfortunately, the perpetrator was the friend. And that was even a harder conversation to have, because it was like, I never saw this side of you. And then it's like, do you also need help? And obviously it's like, I do. And obviously it's like, oh yeah, I went out of hand. I'll never do that again. I can't believe I even did it. Like, I'm in shock, and all those things I probably wanted to hear, so that I can feel like, okay,
my friend isn't so terrible.
He's not a psychopath. But it's hard because.
And do you think, Amanda, that it's the duty of a friend, if you know your friend is the perpetrator, to call them out on
Yes. I think you and me call out people by nature, so it's easy. Someone who isn't confrontational, it's a bit harder. But I think it's our social duty. Because yes, today maybe it's a fist, but tomorrow maybe your homie could be killing someone. Like literally, using fists or whatever, but they could literally just, that one punch could change everything. No, and I wouldn't want to have been in that situation where I said nothing. It's a hard conversation to have. The reception's not going to be, but I do think, especially once it gets to the levels where it's out in the open, it happens in front of you. I think that very first moment, it's because you set that boundary, right? Like, this is not right. And I think it is so confronting, because it fights against all those things we talked about at the beginning of the episode. The behind closed doors, that happens in their relationship. Let's not mess with that. All that stuff. But I think you're only doing humanity a service, and even the person themselves, because people can be rehabilitated and say, I used to do that, and now I don't, or I've worked through it, or I'm a victim of a cycle of abuse from my father, from my grandfather, from, so knowing that people can change, if you do believe people can change, then you do owe it to the person to speak up, because they're not going to change without you speaking up.
Yeah, it's true.
They're just going to be like, oh, Rumbi is fine with me acting like that, you know.
And I think it's always good to put yourself in the position of someone else. So, for example, if you found yourself in an abusive relationship and you knew your abuser's friends all were aware of it and did nothing, like, wouldn't that trip you up? Like, I'll be like, hey, hold your person, hold your homie. You know what I mean? Like, so that's also another way. It's not easy, of course. It is hard, but we got to do better in society. Like, this thing of hands off is just not healthy at all. It hasn't served us as a people. It will not continue to serve us. And I think everyone deserves to live and grow up in a home or a space where they feel safe. Full stop. Like, it's
for sure.
I believe it's a basic human
right.
And, you know, I can, from personal experience, say to you, the journey to move past the cloud of domestic violence is a long, tedious, and as a child, when you are fumbling with your emotions and how you feel and dealing with life, and then all of a sudden this huge thing is dropped in your lap and you don't even know like how to process that. You don't have the tools. There was no one to speak. Like, it's insane. I don't know how else to put it. So
no, for sure.
Everybody deserves to grow up in a safe space and to feel loved and to feel welcomed. Of course, it's normal to have disagreements. Of course, it's normal to, you know, not see eye to eye, because we are human and we're all different and have different viewpoints. But domestic violence is not normal and should not be normalized.
No, not at all. And we need to have good language around disagreements, because it doesn't have to escalate.
Yes,
exactly. It literally doesn't. Exactly. That part to me is a choice, you know, because you do have a moment where you can be like, oh, my emotions are getting the better of me here.
Let me pause.
And then to let them get that far. Some people have it in them. They'll never do that. They'll always check themselves, and some people don't. And the ones who don't need to be conscious of that and find ways and strategies in and around that. Yeah, because that ain't the way to do it. For sure. Any helpful resources that one can reach out to? There's definitely a few, and we're gonna probably compile a list and make sure to add them onto our socials when this episode airs and in the episode notes for you. A lot of them, of course, unfortunately, are women centric.
Yes.
But that's just the way, as Rumbi has eloquently explained it, this is the way that the scales were tipped. But having said that, a lot of them are also helplines, so I'm sure even men can reach out to them. But when it comes to shelters and stuff, it tends to be women. But there is help out there. And even just having your friend to talk to, obviously being quite specific about your friend. Hopefully people who are listening to this episode, if you are going through a difficult time, you are welcome to reach out to us and we can try to connect you with any resources. But that's a decision that you would have to make on a personal level. You do deserve better, as Rumbi said.
100%. Yo, that was a very deep topic, and we hope it added some value, brought some value to you, our listeners. So our Zim shout out for this week, on a much lighter note. Amanda, who's our Zim shout out for this week?
Our Zim shout out this week is Munya Chawawa. I'm pretty sure we've all seen his skits. I'm pretty sure he got us all through the pandemic.
100%.
A lot of seeing Zimbabwe and also, you know, making it on the UK comedy scene is very, very exciting. And he's always quite quick with his
his turnaround time.
his turnaround time, and he gets it. He always gets it. And we love the creativity, we love the songs, we love the personas, and all we can do is say keep going. We know this is not like he's just gonna rise and rise, because the talent is in
evident
bounds.
Yeah, one of my favorite skits, if you haven't seen it, was after Rihanna announced she was pregnant by ASAP, and then he did a Drake. that Drake
response, I know, right?
I was finished.
I
know.
Good,
so talented, really. He's great. So shout out to Munya, Chawawa. And this brings us to the end of this episode. As always, please, especially with these topics, please hit us up. We're on Instagram at It's Layered. We're on Twitter at It's Layered Pod. Email us, itslayeredpod@gmail.com. Please submit your comments, questions. We will be talking about this in our final episode, just, sharing and responding to you. So shout out to our loyal listeners, to everyone who's been writing, who's like, when's the new season or when's the new episode?
I know.
You guys really keep us going. Like, who would have thunk? The world opened up, but we're still here. So thank you so much. And we'll see you again on the next episode. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Remy.
Bye.
Yeah.